Any Australian aviation enthusiast, or even the general public, will know all too well just how expensive flights are in Australia. According to ABC News, Australian airfares average $29 per 100 kilometers. On the same price scale, a ticket from London to New York would cost $1,600 one way or $3,200 for a round trip. So that makes us beg the question, why are there no cheap flights in Australia? Why hasn't an airline with a business model like Ryanair or EasyJet disrupted the market? And will we ever see cheap flights in Australia? In order to answer these questions, we first have to understand the current market in Australia. Currently, 4 major airlines operate in the region: Qantas, Virgin Australia, Jetstar, and also Tiger Airways respectively. These airlines essentially create a duopoly in the Australian market. There's simply no reason for Jetstar and Tiger Airways to lower their fares, since there's no airline to compete with, and if they did lower fares too much, passengers will be taken away from high revenue traditional carriers. In contrast, the US has 18 major airlines operating across the country, and Europe has around 30, given that it's divided into many different countries, with most having their own flag carrier. Now firstly, wages are very high in Australia, and I mean very high compared to Europe. The cost of labour makes up around 30% of the cost of an airline ticket on Australia, which is a very large proportion if airlines want to keep costs down. There was a scandal with Jetstar running flights to Australia using their Jetstar Asia subsidiary. The Thai staff were paid less than the Australians, and as a result, the industry has since become even more regulated. Furthermore, Australia is just, well, sparse. Everything is so far apart. There's only 5 cities with enough demand to become a hub or a focus city for a carrier, which are Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and also Perth. This makes the hub and spoke model of aviation very difficult in Australia, and is part of the reason why Qantas, for example, spread their operation cost across these airports, with Melbourne and Sydney being North American hubs and also Perth being an Asian hub. However, this could be an advantage for a low-cost carrier. Typically, low-cost carriers have focus cities, but they also operate routes between many destinations. For example, Ryanair has around 50 European focus cities. Just by having 10 focus cities in Australia, a new low-cost carrier could open 45 routes if they created routes connecting all of their focus cities. However, one issue would be that Australia's airports are not cheap. Most of the cities in Australia only have one airport. We know that low-cost carriers like Ryanair prefer to operate to secondary airports in cities since they are far cheaper. For example, Ryanair flies to Stansted and Gatwick in London rather than Heathrow, and EasyJet loves to fly to Luton. Now there's just no alternative airports in Australia. Sydney only has one, and the same is with Perth. Melbourne has 2, but the second really isn't used that much. These primary airports are incredibly expensive and make up a lot of the ticket price. Now finally, there just isn't a lot of unfulfilled demand for air travel in Australia. A low-cost carrier would need a small aircraft. Perhaps the A220 would be perfect, carrying between 116 and 141 people on that aircraft. Maybe we'll see an ultra low-cost carrier in Australia in the future. However, at this moment in time, it doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon. You could hang in there, my fellow Aussies, but it's probably not going to come at all.